I bought her a ring, the kind that she'd always dreamed about, with a delicate band and a diamond that sparkled like the future I thought we'd have. She bought him a flight. One dash way. My name is Alex. I'm 32 years old, and I live in a small but cozy apartment just outside of Seattle. I work as a project manager at a construction firm. Nothing glamorous. Just a job I show up to every day, and most days I'm fine with that. I'm the guy who likes routine. I wake up at 6 o'clock every morning, have the same oatmeal for breakfast, listen to podcasts on my way to work, and get home just in time for dinner. Predictable, steady. I like it that way. Met Laura at a friend's barbecue 3 years ago. She wasn't my type, not really. I was always the kind of guy who played at safe blondes with straight hair, kind of preppy. Laura, she had this messy dark hair, a slight quirk in her smile, and a laugh that filled the room. It was a laugh. That told you she didn't care who was listening. She'd laugh at her own jokes even when no one else did. She was spontaneous, unpredictable, but in the best way possible. We hit it off almost immediately. We'd spend weekends in the park, coffee in hand, sitting on the grass, talking about everything and nothing. We'd have these long conversations about where we saw ourselves in 10 years, always joking about how we'd be sitting in a cottage, sipping wine, with a golden retriever running around. She'd play her favorite songs on the guitar in the evenings, and I'd hum along, even though I couldn't carry a tune. We were perfect for each other. So I thought, but over time, things started to change. It was subtle at first. Nothing that would have raised any real alarms. She'd start texting at odd hours, her phone always face down when I was around. She'd get quieter, more distant. The evenings that we used to spend talking about dreams, about life, were now replaced with her scrolling on her phone, or saying she was working late, even when she wasn't. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But then the gut feeling started gnawing at me. Something was off. I could sense it, even though she still told me everything was fine, that I was being too worried, too suspicious. I still remember the first time I really questioned everything. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we were out running errands. Made a joke about the long line at the store, trying to lighten the mood. But Laura didn't laugh. Instead, she looked at her phone with a frown. She was about to put it down when I saw a name flash across the screen, Ethan. I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was a work contact, right? But it didn't sit right. With me, later that night, as we sat on the couch, I asked her about it. "Who's Ethan?" I asked casually. Her response came too quickly. "Oh, just a guy I know from work." Why? I told myself I was overthinking it. We went on with our evening, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Every time she'd leave the room, the phone would follow. Every time we'd make plans, she'd suddenly have something urgent to do. And then there was the smell of her perfume. It was stronger on the nights she stayed late at work. It's almost like she was hiding something. I didn't want to believe it, but it was like I could feel the cracks starting to show. But still, I tried to hold on to the good moments. The weekend we spent at the lake house last month. How we laughed about the dumbest things. How she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I tried to ignore the signs, tried to convince myself that the love we had was real, that we were fine, and then it all changed. One Sunday afternoon, I came home early from work, just a little earlier than I'd usually be. I opened the door to our apartment and heard the sound of muffled laughter coming from the living room. My stomach dropped. I thought maybe she was on the phone with a friend, but when I walked in, I saw it. Her phone screen lit up, and there it was, his name. Ethan. I could see that smile, the one I'd come to know so well. But there was something different in it now. Something I wasn't prepared for. She didn't even see me standing there. I stood frozen in the doorway. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight of the silence that surrounded us. It's funny how a feeling can start off as just a tiny whisper and slowly grow into something you can't ignore. At first, I tried to brush off the feeling that something wasn't right between us. Maybe I was overreacting. But as time went on, the signs became harder to overlook. It was subtle at first, small things that didn't make sense. For instance, the way Laura started getting defensive whenever I asked about her plans. She'd go from being open and transparent to being evasive. Just going out with the girls, she'd say, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was going on. I noticed the way she kept her phone on silent more often. If I asked why, she'd say it was for work or peace of mind. That was the first time I started feeling like I didn't know her anymore. A few times, I caught her with her phone face down, even when we were just sitting on the couch together. Whenever I walked into the room, she'd quickly swipe away whatever was on the screen. It wasn't like her. Then there were the late nights. She'd start telling me she had to work, but I knew her schedule. She was a graphic designer, not some emergency responder. If she was working late, it was because she was choosing to. I tried to ignore it. Maybe she was just busy. But then I saw it again, her phone lighting up at 11:30 p.m. with a text from Ethan. I tried to act like I didn't see it. Tried to act like I wasn't starting to spiral, but I couldn't. The feeling that something wasn't right was like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. It got worse when I found a pair of her shoes in the back of her car, shoes I didn't recognize. She didn't wear them when we went out. When I asked about them, she brushed it off. Just something I picked up for work, she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. But I couldn't shake it. Didn't know how to explain it to myself why. Her response felt so hollow. Why every time she mentioned Ethan, it felt like a red flag I was too afraid to acknowledge. The next week, I decided I needed to confront her. Not in a loud, angry way, but in a quiet, calm way. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. So one night when she came home from working late, I asked her about Ethan again. I said it casually, like it was no big deal, like I wasn't losing sleep over it. Double quotes, "Hey, Laura, I noticed you've been texting Ethan a lot lately," I said. "Who is he really?" Her face froze. The smile she had on her face for the past couple of days suddenly disappeared. She paused for a moment, not meeting my eyes. "He's just a guy I work with," she said, and I swear I heard something in her voice. A flicker of guilt, or maybe just irritation, that I was asking. "Why do you care so much?" And then, just like that, she turned it back on me. She told me I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking things, that I needed to trust her. She called me insecure, told me I was being unfair. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to so badly. But a part of me felt like she was pushing me away, like she was closing a door I couldn't open. I decided to give her space. I tried to trust her, tried to bury that gut feeling that had been growing inside me, but it was getting harder to ignore. I knew something was happening, but I didn't know what to do with it. The next few days were quiet. She kept her distance, texting on her phone more often, staying on her laptop late into the night. The tension between us was palpable. It wasn't just the things I noticed, like how she always seemed to be texting someone when I wasn't around. It was how the atmosphere felt, cold, distant. Like we were two people who used to know each other, but something had changed. Then it happened. One night when she went out with her friends again, I had a choice to make. I could either keep pretending everything was fine, or I could confront it head on. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed her phone from the counter when she left and unlocked it. I didn't feel good about it, but the need to know what was happening was too strong. I opened her messages. There it was. The confirmation. The texts between her and Ethan weren't just work-related. They were flirtatious, teasing, intimate. She had been talking to him about how hard her day was, how she wished he could take her away from all of this, and how she'd love to see him again. And then, the worst part, she had sent him a picture. A selfie of her lying on our bed, her hair messy, looking right at the camera with a coy smile. I felt my heart stop. She'd been lying to me, and I had been too blind to see it. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen. I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't ready. Had to confront her. But there was a part of me that wasn't ready to show my cards just yet. I needed more. More proof, more clarity. I didn't want to just yell. I wanted to make her feel the way I felt right now. I wasn't going to storm in with accusations. No, this needed to be different. I had to be calm, collected, strategic. If I was going to lose everything, it would be on my terms. For the next few days, I stayed quiet. I didn't ask her about Ethan. I didn't ask her where she was going or when she'd be home. I knew she was getting suspicious. She could feel the distance between us, and she didn't like it. She'd text me more, Call me just to hear my voice, but I kept my responses short, careful not to give anything away. In the meantime, I started collecting everything. Every text, every call log, every moment where she slipped up. I screenshot her messages with Ethan, not that I needed them for proof, because I already knew, but I needed them for something else, something deeper. I started keeping track of her movements. When she said she'd be home late, I'd wait for the moment she wasn't looking. I'd glance at her phone. I'd take a mental note. This wasn't about revenge. This was about knowing I wasn't crazy, that my instincts weren't wrong. This was about me taking back control. The tipping point came when I came home early from work one day. It was around 4:30 p.m., a bit earlier than I usually arrived. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. I could hear her muffled voice from the bedroom. But when I listened closely, it wasn't her talking to a friend. No, it was Ethan. I froze in the hallway, standing still just outside the door. I couldn't make out every word, but I could hear the tone. It was light-hearted, flirtatious. She was laughing at something he said, the same laugh that used to be reserved just for me. My heart dropped. It was like someone had taken everything. We built and shattered it in front of me. I stepped back, retreating into the living room. I needed space to think. This wasn't the way I imagined my life would go. But I had an idea. It wasn't a moment of rage. It was methodical, almost poetic in a way. I wasn't going to lose it. Not yet. No, I would do this in a way that would sting. I started packing her things, slowly, carefully. I folded her clothes, put them in boxes, and made a list of all the things she had left behind when she moved in. The things I had bought for us, our shared home, our memories were now mine to keep or discard, like I was in some kind of trance, but I didn't feel the anger yet. That would come later. I waited until that evening when I knew she'd be back home, expecting nothing unusual. She would think I was just as she left Meekum, distant, unaware. But I wasn't. Not anymore. When she walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch just like I always had been, looking at my phone, the same relaxed posture I always held. She didn't expect the coldness in the air. She dropped her purse and walked towards me, giving me that smile, the smile that felt like a lie now. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" she asked, her voice light. To rehearsed, I looked up, not returning the smile. "We need to talk," I said. Her eyes flickered. With a moment of panic, but she hid it quickly, her face returning to its normal expression. "What's wrong?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots, every single one. The flirty texts, the pictures, the words I never thought I'd see her say to another man. Her face turned white as she saw the proof, the one thing she couldn't deny. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. I could see her trying to come up with an excuse, but there was nothing left to say. The silence between us felt suffocating. "I don't understand," she finally whispered, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" Trying to hold the tears back. "Why? Because you did this to us, Laura. I didn't force you to lie. I didn't force you to betray me. This is your choice." She started to cry. The tears came to easily now, guilt, regret, and realization all hitting her at once. But it didn't change anything. I couldn't unsee what I saw. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted any of this." But she didn't get to have the last word. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I was just done. Done with the lies, done with the hurt. I grabbed the box of her things. "I think it's time for you to go," I said, my voice steady. I watched as she took her things, her body trembling, but she didn't fight me. There were no more apologies, no more promises that she'd change. It's just an empty shell of the woman I once thought I knew, walking out of the door. The apartment felt colder the moment she stepped out. The silence was deafening. I sat in the living room for hours after that, feeling the weight of everything. I could hear the clock ticking in the corner, every tick pulling me further into the reality of what just happened. I had my closure, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like an ending, a painful one. The first few days after she left were the hardest. It wasn't even about the anger anymore. It was the emptiness. The space she left behind was almost unbearable. I kept seeing little things that reminded me of the coffee mug she used every morning. The way she'd leave her shoes scattered by the door, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. It felt like I couldn't breathe without it all choking me. I couldn't stay in that apartment, not with all the memories tied to it. I packed up my things, booked a small Airbnb for a few weeks, and got out. I didn't want to be around people. But I also didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. I just needed space. A reset. In the meantime, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I sought therapy. At first I thought it was a waste of time. I mean, what could a therapist tell me that I didn't already know? But as the sessions went on, I realized how much I had been holding in, how much pain I had ignored just to keep things together. One week, I ran into Laura's best friend at the grocery store. She looked surprised to see me, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of pretending like everything was fine. We had a brief conversations, small talk, nothing too deep, but I could see the pity in her eyes when she asked, "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said, just moving on. She didn't know what to say to that. Neither did I. After a few weeks, Laura tried to reach out. At first it was a text, then a call. She apologized for everything, told me how much she regretted it, how she made a huge mistake I didn't pick up. I wasn't ready for her to pull me back in with her words. I'd already been through the worst of it, and I knew there was nothing left to salvage. A few days later, she showed up at my Airbnb, standing at the door with a bag in her hand, her face stained with tears. "I'm sorry, Alex," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you." I didn't invite her in. I just stood there looking at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just numb. "I'm not the guy I used to be," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "And I'm okay with that now." She tried to say more, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't need the apology anymore. It wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't change what had already happened. I closed the door softly, not with malice, but with finality. The sound of it locking behind me was like the closing of a chapter. A chapter I didn't want to reopen. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't need her to fix me. I had already started to rebuild on my own. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. I ran into Ethan, the man who had been the cause of all of this. It's the man who had somehow waltzed into my life, taking what wasn't his, without a second thought. It was at a cafe of all places. I recognized him immediately. The same cocky grin, the same relaxed posture. Like he hadn't just shattered everything I had worked for. He didn't see me at first, and I considered just walking out. But no, I had nothing to lose. I walked up to him. He looked up, his smile faltering for a moment, like he knew something was off. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice defensive. I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't even upset. I was just indifferent. "I just wanted to say one thing," I said. "We'll never be a part of something real, not like we were. You'll never know what it's like to love someone, to build something with them. So enjoy the pieces you've picked up, because that's all you'll ever have." His face flushed with irritation, but I could tell that somewhere inside a part of him was feeling what I had felt. The realization that I had moved on, that I was better without either of them. "You think you've won?" he asked, almost scoffing. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I didn't win. I just walked away from the game." I left him there, sitting alone at the table, his expression a mix of confusion and bitterness. But for me, it was closure. For the first time in months, I felt free. It's strange, you know, how life has a way of stripping everything away and forcing you to rebuild from the ground up. I've been through heartbreak before, but nothing like this. Not like this. I spent so much time thinking about who I used to be, who I thought I was. I always thought I had my life figured out. I had the job, the routine, the stable relationship. I thought I was the kind of guy who didn't get caught up in drama, who could stay calm when everything around him was falling apart. But when it happened to me, when the betrayal was aimed at me, shattered that version of myself. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. And that's okay. Because somewhere in the mess of it all, I learned something important. I'm not defined by what she did or what Ethan did. I'm defined by how I respond. I used to think that getting revenge would make me feel better, that if I could just have one final confrontation, one moment where I showed them both how much they hurt me, then it would be enough. But the truth is, that moment when I confronted Ethan at the cafe, it wasn't for him. It was for me. It was my way of telling myself that I was done, that I didn't need validation from anyone else. Not from her, not from him. It's just me. I've learned that healing isn't a straight line. It's not some neat, tidy process where one day you wake up and everything's okay. Healing is messy. It's like trying to put a shattered mirror back together, imperfect pieces that don't quite fit, gaps in between where you're not sure how to fill them. But each piece you put back makes you stronger, even if it's hard to see at first. I don't know if I'll ever trust again the way I did before. But I do know this: I'm not afraid to trust myself. I've gotten to know myself in ways I never expected. I've learned how strong I really am. And that strength isn't in holding on to the past, it's in letting go. I still have bad days, of course. There are days when I think about the past, about how much I gave to someone who didn't appreciate it. There are nights when I wake up in the middle of the night and feel the weight of everything I lost. But there are also days when I wake up and realize that I'm no longer that guy who clung to hope in the face of dishonesty. I'm the guy who walked away. The guy who chose peace over pain. And you know what? I'm okay with that. She got the house. I got my peace. Enjoyed my story? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories like this.